It's that time of year again. We are now accepting applications for the Spring Force Multiplier cohort. This small group coaching cohort is designed for executive assistants and chiefs of staff who are looking to improve their leadership skills and boost their careers. We meet once a week for 6 months and cover topics such as building the mindset of a leader, creating high-performance habits, building confidence, engaging in fierce conversations, positioning yourself as a strategic business partner, creating growth plans, learning how to cast the vision, navigate change, and lead alongside your executive, and much more. To apply, go to founderandforcemultiplier.com/cohort. And new this year, we're also launching a founder cohort. This is a 3-month small group coaching program for founders and leaders who are looking to hire an executive assistant or who want to learn how to work better with their current assistant. If you are a founder or entrepreneur who knows that it's time to find leverage and grow your business by finding a strategic business partner, then this is the coaching that you've been looking for. Again, for more info and to apply to either of the founder or the Force Multiplier cohort, go to founderandforcemultiplier.com/cohort. Welcome to this week's episode of the Founder and the Force Multiplier podcast, where we explore how founders and leaders work together with their right-hand partners to turn ideas into action and build wildly successful businesses. Today I am speaking with the co-founders of Variantista, Katherine Williams and Derrick Scarpaci. Variantista is a bespoke content writing and strategy brand. Their mission is to help brands build a unique online presence that educates, inspires, and connects them with their audience on a deeper personal level. Derrick is a visionary with a passion for international business. Derrick works exclusively with C-suites and thought leaders through one-on-one coaching sessions to advise on every facet of their business, from strategizing to condense 5 years worth of growth into 1 year, internal process optimization for exit strategies, capturing a brand's vision and breaking it down into SMART goals, finding and seizing lost profits by optimizing production efficiency, to providing clarity and next steps when business owners feel stagnant. After 13 years in education working as a literacy specialist, ESL teacher, and curriculum developer, Katherine transitioned full-time into her passion, writing. With 10 years of freelance copywriting under her belt, she's watched marketing, branding, and SEO tactics change with the rapidly evolving business landscape. This was a great conversation about the power of human connection, the future of AI, entrepreneurship, and brand building that all founders and their force multipliers can learn from.
Derrick and Katherine are also offering an exciting bonus to all of our podcast listeners. Head to Variantista.com at the link in the show notes and fill out the contact form with the note, Founder and Force Multiplier podcast listener, to receive your free 1,500-word article with the purchase of a content strategy.
If you enjoyed this episode as much as I think you will, then be sure to let us know in all of the usual places, such as leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this episode.
Hello, Katherine and Derrick. Thank you so much for joining me for the podcast today. Very excited to have you here. And we're going to just jump right in. So for those of our listeners who are not familiar with Variantista, can you give us a little bit of a history about how and why you started this company?
Why don't you start?
Absolutely. So Variantista kind of started like all great companies do, with a bit of a dream and a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
It started with Katherine is truly a talented writer and has a passion for writing. And that's why she's a co-founder. And then I also just have an absolute passion for building businesses and systematizing things and building these massive, beautiful puzzles. And so we decided to kind of partner up together, both in life and in a business venture, and kind of turn our first business into one of Katherine's greatest passions, which is speaking to people and the eloquence of words and speech, and the power of storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And tell me a little bit about the name of the company and what it means.
Okay. So a Variantista is a philologist. Now, for those of you who don't know what a philologist is, because I definitely didn't before we started this, a philologist is someone who chooses the perfect words. It's a wordsmith of the highest caliber. And so we chose the name Variantista for our brand because we wanted to go with something different, but we wanted to go with something that meant something. Because our passion is to connect brands with their audience on a very deep level. And my specific passion is to capture brands' voices and help them figure out how to position themselves as a unique entity within their market and within their industry. And so one of the ways that I know to do that through 10 years of freelancing experience and also just as a creative writer myself from long before that, the best way to do that is to find the words that best express both who you are and what your audience needs to hear. It's a very delicate balancing act. And so when we were bouncing off name ideas for Variantista, it went through a lot of ideations, and then Derrick suggested, why don't we look at other languages? And we both have studied multiple languages, and so it was really surprising to me that that hadn't even occurred to me. And so we delved into several different languages, and he came back with this Italian word, and it was perfect.
Yeah, I think it encapsulates your company so well. And I also do that too, going back to, I like to look at Latin words a lot, Italian words. They're so rich in meaning sometimes that I think sometimes the English language does miss. So I think that's very cool that you incorporated that into your brand. Tell me a little bit about what you did before you started your entrepreneurial journey. Were you full-on entrepreneurs before, or did you have some corporate gig that you decided to give up?
So that is a very long story. For me personally, I'm a bit older than him. When I went to school for theater, actually. But I knew that I wanted to be a writer too. And I thought, well, maybe I want to be a performer and do writing in Hollywood, or maybe I want to go to New York. And then life had different plans. I still like to perform on the side, and it's a good hobby at the moment, maybe someday professionally again. But anyway, I studied that, and then I ended up going to grad school a few years later. And when I came back to the United States from grad school, I was struggling to find work because everybody was saying I was overqualified. And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do? I have an advanced degree. I have years of experience in education. I know how to write. I know how to do all these things. I've been working as a freelancer, but it's not paying the bills. Like, what do I do? And Derrick suggested that I go and I start teaching in China. He was like, you can save up some money, you can get some professional experience, you can really kind of orient yourself and experience the outside world of what you're used to. And I was like, okay. So I went and I taught English in China for a few years. And when we came back, he joined me at some point. I can't remember exactly what year at this moment, but he joined me over there at some point. And we, during COVID, came back to the States, and we decided that, okay, let's start the business that we've been talking about for so long. Let's go into business for ourselves. That's kind of a piecemeal story. He can fill in the rest of the blanks.
Okay, that's cool.
On my side, I've always been entrepreneurial.
Yeah, he has.
I mean, like when I was 3 years old, I could sell ice to a polar bear, which actually today I guess isn't that hard, but maybe ice to an Eskimo is a little bit better. And so I've always just been fascinated with interpersonal relationships and the dynamics between buyers and sellers and that type of stuff. And so I actually, we started Variantista about a year after I got out of college. As well, throughout college, we kind of kicked around ideas of different businesses and a couple different freelance ideas, and maybe doing some like white labeling using Fiverr and then repackaging. And really what we found was just there's a lot of that already out there. And there's a lot of like marketing companies specifically that charge you an arm and a leg, which is fine. I genuinely believe like you get what you pay for, except that I feel like in marketing, sometimes you don't. And I know people are going to be coming for me on that one, but it's so important. Like that was where we came from, was like these marketers, they do one thing or they do another thing. And they do that really well, but they're struggling to A, connect with their clients, and B, then use that connection to communicate their clients' wants, desires, needs to the customers.
Can I interject? Yeah. That was something I did freelance writing while I was in college and while I was overseas. And that was something that I found quite frequently, was that oftentimes I would work with clients who'd either been burned by previous people they'd worked with because, they didn't understand their voice, or they didn't do proper research, or, they just gave them words on a page and then the thing didn't perform. And I really learned that it takes a very delicate combination of technical skills on the writing side, but also industry knowledge of the subject matter, as well as knowing how specifically Google, all search engines, but specifically Google work. In order to make marketing work these days, it's not enough to just have solid marketing principles behind you anymore. Anyway, continue.
So personally for me, like before Variantista, I was at college.
Yeah.
I mean, because during college or university, and then after university, it was just constant iterations of like, okay, so you work on this content mill, you work on that content mill. Here's what they're doing right. Here's what they're doing wrong. Here's where the clients are being served very well and underserved. And so just constantly like writing down notes, like all the time, like, okay, so they do this really well.
All of my complaints. He's like, I'm just going to file those away and I'll remind you in 3 weeks.
And then
that's what great companies are born, I think, is
exactly
identifying those problems and then finding the unique solution to them.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. It was just like, sit down with all of those notes and then go, okay, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah. I love that. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you've had while building this company. Obviously, we love hearing about the success stories, but we can learn a lot, and our listeners can learn a lot from some of the failures or the mistakes, or just some of the challenges that you had to work through as you were building your organization. So do any come to mind, and maybe what did you learn from them?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'm a very open person. I'm very open to new experience, but I'm very risk averse. And so he, ever since we got to know each other about 7 years ago, has been pushing me. And he's like, I really think you'd be good in business. I really think you're better at talking to people than you know. I know you're good at writing, but I think you're better with people than you understand. And it's been about 7 years of me going, I don't know. I think you're wrong. I'm not sure. But what about money? What about this? And just constantly playing that what if game in my head. And I finally, in the last year, really come to a point where I'm like, you know what? We can do this. And I can do this. And it's been a lot. It's been really hard because there's a lot that you have to unlearn. And there's a lot of things like in your past that maybe the risk aversion served me once because I was in a situation that was out of my control, or I didn't know what was going on around me, or I hadn't grown up enough yet. I hadn't experienced enough of the world. But I realized very slowly that a lot of the things for me personally that I used to protect myself are no longer helpful. I think they were once, but they don't matter anymore. I just find like I had applied all these arbitrary rules to my life that were very much holding me back. Like, I don't want to talk on the phone to sell to people or to help people. And that was one of the things that he constantly had to tell me. He's like, you're not selling to people. You're helping people. That's the purpose. That's what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly why we started this. He's like, right. So you don't need to be afraid of talking to people and showing them how you can help them. And it's taken a long time, but I finally had that light bulb go off in my head and I'm like, okay. So
yeah.
Letting go of the things that don't serve you, I guess.
That's
a lesson here.
Which is an amazing lesson in so many ways.
And
Derrick helping kind of coach you through some of that. Was there any tools or resources that you used to kind of go through that unlearning process?
Lord.
A lot of psychology.
Okay.
So like I'm very much a trainer at heart, a helper at heart.
Yeah, he is.
I'm a visionary. Like I absolutely, like I'm the big ideas type of person. It's like, here's your $100 billion idea. I can tell you exactly how to do it. I have no interest in putting
and then I'm like, let me put all the little details together. Let me make it beautiful. Let me make it perfect. I love this.
So in the beginning, there was a lot of fundamentals of psychology in terms of setting intentions,
Mhm.
understanding intentions, meditation. Also the book 12 Months to a Million.
Mhm.
That's not psychology, but the author's name is escaping me.
Ryan.
I don't want to misquote it, but 12 Months to a Million.
Yeah.
Excellent book.
Yes.
Excellent book. It's more for like the online store owner,
Yeah.
but there's there's certain ways to think when you want to be a business owner or an entrepreneur. You have to think differently than an employee.
Yeah.
Or even a manager.
And that was the hardest transition for me.
Yeah. And so the tools, I just, it's just escaping me at the moment. There's so many of the tools were like little videos on YouTube and talking to some corporate trainers and all different types of things.
I know for me personally, I started really doing the mental work about 4 years ago. When I was living in China, because I didn't like the way that my life was looking. I mean, I was living in China. I was happy. I was traveling and I was teaching and I enjoyed it. But I'd begun to realize that there were things about myself that I didn't like. And there were ways that I was thinking that were not positive. And I couldn't figure out why, because it was one of those things like I wanted to turn my attitude around. I had been a happy person. And so I had to figure out what happened, and is there a reason for me feeling this way, and then what can I do to help myself through it. And it took a while to figure out the difference between sulking and actually letting myself grieve and let go of things so that I could move forward and grow as a person. And as I started working through just some very difficult personal things, I started to find that yes, it was very difficult, but every single day I was a little happier. I had a slightly better outlook on life. And a lot of that was thanks to him being very patient, and helping me remember, like, you have dreams. I know you don't feel them right now. I know you don't see them anymore. I'm here to help you remember that they're there.
And actually, to that point, the best tool, like the best tool I think anybody can ever have in their tool belt for anything. And I mean this like anything. Mel Robbins talks about it, who I love, by the way.
She's fantastic.
Amazing. Is the 5 seconds.
Yeah.
When you hit a wall or you don't want to do something, like the famous clip is her talking about getting out of bed, right?
Yeah.
It's like, say, I'm going to get out of bed, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you do it.
Yep.
And giving yourself, there's a balance between telling yourself what you're going to do and allowing yourself to take a moment to absorb that, whether or not you want to do it, and then do it anyway.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people, when they're trying to go from employee to entrepreneur, or just employee to employee, like going from like one set of skills like corporate banking to all of a sudden like a retail thing. You just try to shove a new personality into yourself.
Yeah.
Or try to shove new skills.
That doesn't work. I tried. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work because you're suppressing these important feelings, but you can't let them run away, right? You can't. So that 5 seconds of taking the moment to realize what's going on and then doing what you have to do is the right balance.
Yeah.
So best tool.
Yeah. And I would say for those who maybe the counting down doesn't work, one of the things that I used to tell myself and still tell myself when I'm not feeling motivated, if I do that and it doesn't work, then I remind myself, I'm like, okay, well, I have decided that every day for the rest of my life, when I feel stuck, I'll just do the next right thing. Whatever that thing is, whatever the next right thing for me to do is, I'm going to do it. And sometimes you don't know what that is. So then you have to take a step back and you have to go, okay, I'm going to write out all of the things that I need to do. And I'm going to prioritize them. And then I'm going to say, okay, so which one of these is right? And sometimes it's interesting because sometimes the right thing for you to do isn't even on that list. And then
sometimes the right thing is to get an ice cream and call it a day.
Go to bed, you know?
And you know, that's so interesting because they're so those things are usually so much smaller than we make them out to be. Like the next right thing might just be making a list.
Right. Exactly.
Not going and writing a brand new content plan.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of working way too much, which is one of those things that it's great for when you're in the zone and you're really working on a project and it's going to be fantastic, but it's not so great when your list is just getting longer and longer and longer and longer.
So some of the things I've noticed just by talking to you both here today is the partnership between the two of you, and that I'm hearing, the big ideas, the visionary, and then you love to get in and like make it happen, Katherine. So talk to me a little bit about how you work together and what makes your business partnership successful.
Ooh, okay. I love this question because in business, you generally have to have a partner. There's very few one-man bands out there. And at some point, it doesn't matter how good you are, you have to hand it over, right? Because you can't work 10,000 hours, right? No. That's why you have employees. And at some point, you have to. There's two things. First thing, I think we have a unique a unique set of circumstance because we're also in a relationship while also in a business relationship. And so that is terrible and wonderful all at the same time.
Yeah, because sometimes you say, okay, we're not going to talk about it. Work at dinner. And guess what you talk about? We're all dinner long.
So the first thing is just, and this comes with the duality of both the relationships of the business and the personal, is absolutely get into it. Like absolutely. Don't get into a screaming fight of pettiness, but absolutely, like, it's okay to be a little bullheadish.
Yeah.
And let the ideas get out there.
Yeah.
Right. Let it be on the table.
Yeah.
And then after we've butt heads, after there's been this is going to ruin the company or whatever. Then it's like, okay, let's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And now let's get critical, right? Yeah. I love this part about what you just said. I'm fearful, like I'm genuinely fearful, or I'm skeptical, or something of this other portion that you said. And it's that combination of the first step is do not be afraid to say what you think. And it's hard.
Yeah.
Whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship, you are afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
Even the most confident people still struggle with that, because I'm an extremely like, here I am, take it or leave it type of person. But I know that especially like business conversations, that happens. So the first thing is
I was just gonna say that and just kind of echo what you said about the transparent communication in the partnership. But what I also noticed is that you have, which I think is super important, is that you've agreed to those terms of engagement. I think without that agreement, it could go south very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That is a really good point.
It's something that we actually, before we went into business, we employed in our personal relationship. And there are days when we really don't want to, where it's like, I know that we've had this conversation before, but we're going to have it again because this is still bugging one of us, and we have to resolve it, and it can be really hard because you don't want to have conflict, but conflict is healthy as long as you are remembering to respect the other person in the midst of your disagreement.
Yeah. Rules of engagement are really important. And that's why there's just that 2-step process of like, let's get the ideas out there, whether they're good, bad, ugly, whether I horrifically disagree or not. And then second, like, let's take a deep breath and let's think critical, right? Let's put aside our feelings. For like the second portion, you have to put aside feelings.
Yes.
Because especially like in business, this is not personal. In business, like you got to put aside the feelings, and now you got to go, okay, what did the numbers say? Like it might be the best idea in the world, but if you don't have the money, you don't have the money.
Right.
So you either find the money or you don't do it.
How do you divide the, how do you decide like who does what role or who is doing what projects? Is it pretty clearly defined in your organization, because you are, and your co-founders, who, how do you decide who is doing what parts of the business?
Well, some of the things it's really easy. Like we're both very good writers, but I am faster.
Yeah,
And
much faster.
I've been doing this for much longer. I started studying writing when I was a little kid because I want to be a novelist. And so like I'm very good at teaching writing to other people. I'm very good at scanning a piece in like a minute and going, this is publishable, this is not, this is why, fix this. And so like that aspect of things, that was a very clear cut and dry. Katherine, do this. Every once in a while I'll run something past him. But at this point, that's pretty much my domain. When it comes to putting like a system together, oftentimes we'll end up working together because we're both very good at developing systems. He's really good at making things efficient though. So I'll go through and like kind of we'll bounce ideas off of each other. He'll give me the big picture if he's like, okay, I think these things will go together. Go and see how this works. And so then I'll go and I'll see kind of what comes together. And if I can get it to work, great. If not, I'll bring it to him and we'll piece things together again. And then we run it for a while. And then he goes, okay, let me see it. And how can we make it efficient? And then he'll spend a little time on it. And then the next thing, you know, he'll come back to me and he'll be like, okay, here's how you can speed this up by like 3 days. And I'm like, great, fantastic. So those things are kind of cut and dry. Everything else,
honestly, the process is pretty much similar in the sense that like, because I'm the visionary, I get lost. It's so weird. So I can see all the details, but if I start doing the details, I get very lost.
Yeah.
Like I get very lost and very demotivated.
Yeah, he does.
So I generally spew the very large ideas and she sits and types like furiously. Yeah. And we got like 5 recorders going and everything to make sure that we have the whole system and say, okay, get back to me in 2 days. Tell me what, tell me where you get from there. And then it just becomes iteration back and forth. Okay, I'll take this or she'll take that depending on our strengths. And yeah.
I think every visionary, and because I meet with visionaries often, every visionary needs a Katherine, needs that partner.
We call them visionary and builders.
But I would be lost without him, which is actually what I told him at the very beginning. When we met, I was like, I have all these ideas for my life and no idea how to execute any of them.
Yeah. And now that is a serious challenge for the relationship / company though, is because you feel obligated to help with the other person's role.
Yeah.
Because, but it's like, there has to be a line because you have to play to your strengths.
Yeah.
And, you can bolster your weaknesses by developing yourself, but also like you have the other person to bolster your weaknesses.
Yeah.
So stop feeling guilty for doing your job well and allowing them to do their job well. And that's hard sometimes because you're just like, maybe I'll just sometimes I'm like, maybe I'll just get on and write like 5 articles, right? It's like, that's not worth it because she can do that in like easily 1/10 of the time that I can.
Yeah.
Right. And you can go and your time might be better spent doing something else.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. How do you let's talk about business decisions. As co-founders, how are business decisions made? Is it a unanimous decision? Does somebody get veto power? How does that work in your partnership?
It's generally mutual. I don't think that we've made any decisions where we didn't at the end agree on what we were doing.
Generally, it's generally mutual. If it's a business decision and we disagree, I'll
defer to him because of his expertise in this area.
But if it's a writing thing, then if we disagree,
writing or content
in general, except for overall marketing.
Very rarely happens.
I can think of like one since for years.
I think that's because we hash out so many ideas and any potential red flags in the brainstorming problem solving phase that by the time we reach the end, we've already kind of got a framework and we understand like, this is what's going on. This is where we're at. And so we really only have 3 options to work with within this. Yeah. So then what's your gut say? You know?
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I love that. let's talk a little bit about content and branding a little bit. What are 3 things that you feel business owners, founders, entrepreneurs should know when they're starting to build their brand, or should do when they're starting to build their brand?
Okay.
You want to go?
I'll do 2.
Okay.
Because these 2 really, like, they get me. Okay, first one. It is probably not the first thing they should do, but it's definitely something that's at the top of the list. You need to think about a blog. People don't like that answer at all.
No.
They don't, because they're like, well, why would you read a blog about, I don't know, like lawnmowers? It's like 100% you are right.
Except that there's 100 blogs out there about lawnmowers.
Right. There are very few people in this world that are going to be coming back to your blog every single day to see your new post about lawnmowers. However, when we're talking about organic traffic and searchability, a blog is going to win 9 times out of 10, and it's free. Other than producing the content, once it's there, you don't have to run ads. You don't have to have, you know what I mean? It's like, so you have to have the budget to produce the blog itself. But that's
the cost. Yeah,
exactly.
Well,
and it's a hard one because so many business owners, they struggle to see the value because it's not, it can take time. It can take, when we're talking fast track, and I mean like sprinting like Usain Bolt's speed, it's going to be like 6 months till we see even like the small results. It can take a year to 2 years before we really start to see some serious, really good organic traffic. And it really impact your sales. I mean, we generally see with our clients 6 to 12 months.
And I mean, there's things that you can do to speed that up. But generally, if you're just doing the blog and you're not doing anything else, then those numbers are accurate.
I just want to advocate for that number 1. That's actually how we built the Founder and the Force Multiplier brand. It was through the blog. Yes,
and it's like,
because it gives topic authority. It shows that you care about your audience, and you can do affiliate marketing and things through it. There's like all kinds of collaboration that you can do.
Absolutely.
Like, it's an extremely versatile tool, but people often knock it because they're like, well, YouTube. And it's like, yes, YouTube. And that's important. That's important, but it's not everything. And when you
TikTok.
Exactly. They're useful, but they're not everything.
In terms of maximizing your output, I think blogs are still working, but it takes a very educated person to put together a blog that's going to do that. But it's funny that you say that, because the people that say, okay, we'll do a blog, rarely come back and go, oh my God, that was the worst decision ever. Right? And they're more like, thank you so much. I didn't understand, but now I get it.
How important it was.
So the second one for me, is marketing, is think about your brand colors. Okay. Because you pick your brand colors, you get your logo, whether or not you make it yourself or you pay for it or whatever else. And the next thing you know, you're going on, I don't know, a podcast, and you're sitting there going, I picked this weird gray, and now it's blending in with the background of wherever I am or whatever's going on. And it's like, or I have a convention and I need it on, a big billboard or something. It's like, if you don't have the right colors, man, is it tough, because you either have to completely rebrand, or like figure some creative solution. And so that's the first thing, is like, think about where all your brand is going to be. And then the second thing is, people forget that colors invoke emotions, and they invoke certain ideas. And so the colors that you choose about your brand are the most, I would almost argue, the most primal way to communicate what you do. I don't exactly like the word primal, but it's the word I got for the moment. So it's the most subconscious understanding that anchors all the other bits and bobs that you have from your blog posts to your landing pages to your home pages to your TikTok and your YouTubes and all the things. Those colors anchor all of that content. If you're trying to do a luxury brand and you don't have grounded earth tone colors, you're trying to do like these massive, like singing neon green and stuff.
Doesn't work.
If you have an established brand, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, you are. Maybe you are the disruptor, and that's fine. But that's a choice, and you got to stick with it.
And if you want to be this disruptor, I would say the third thing that you really need is to make sure that you understand your brand's voice.
Oh yeah.
You have to understand. That's what we do. But you have to understand your brand's voice, because if your branding is off even just a little bit in who you're trying to talk to, the audience is going to sense that. I mean, okay, sometimes it doesn't matter, because if you have a really good product, maybe that will keep going. But in the beginning, and that's the thing, in the beginning, you'll sell. But if you do not continue to develop your brand and hone who you are and keep that relationship in your audience's mind, after they've bought your first product, they're not going to come back.
Yeah, actually, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we hear the whole concept of brand voice a lot, but what does that mean exactly? Is it just
okay?
I got it. So what I was literally about to give an example.
Oh, good.
So you have to think about, like, if you close your eyes for a minute and think about somebody that truly makes you happy, right? So like for me, that's my Nona. For some people, the grandma. Okay, that's my grandma. When I think about her, like I can sit and close my eyes and think about like what she would say. Her voice has a very quiet but authoritative, like heavy Italian accent, right? And just the sweetest, most round words, like, always asking, do you want pie? Can I make you some food? Please come in, sit, have a glass of wine, all of these different phrases and behaviors. And there's intonation to that. That is a brand's voice, right? And so when you're speaking, like quite literally, when we're talking about the written word, there is sentence structure and like consistency and sentence structure and different stylings of, the classic one is Oxford comma versus no Oxford comma.
Yeah.
Right? That's the classic. That's the one that everybody's going to know, but there's a lot more to that. That's branding voice. And that's only one portion of it, because then on top of the stylistic, then you have the content, which is like, come in, sit down, have a glass of wine, have some food, these type of things. Let me turn on a show for you, or would you like that, whatever. Talking about my Nona. Sweetest woman ever. Would you like some tortellini, or would you like some ravioli, whatever? It's like, it gives you that comfort and that warmth, and it lets you know where you are.
Yeah.
And so that's what the voice is about. So maybe you want that warm, inviting brand, or maybe you're a skating brand or like a skateboard brand, and you want an edgy, like people kind of like have the hair sticking up on the back of their neck. Maybe that's the voice you want. That's what you're doing, right? That's through the written word, visual colors, all that stuff.
And the end goal of establishing your brand's voice is to make your audience feel at home. No matter who they are, no matter who you are, the goal is to make them feel at home. That's what builds brand loyalty. So if you want people to remember you, and you want people to remember who you are and to come back again and again and again, and not just search for a knockoff product on Amazon, you have to ground yourself in who you are and why you're there for them.
Absolutely.
And that will come forth through your branding if it's done right.
Absolutely. Could not say it better.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, I've never actually heard anyone describe it as making you feel at home, but I think that encapsulates brand voice so well, like I haven't heard before. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I've got to ask you this, and I actually think you wrote a blog about this recently about Chat GPT, Jasper AI. I would love to know, as content strategists and brand experts and content writers, what are your thoughts on all of the AI tools that are coming out, and how is that going to change things, or will it change things for business owners?
Well, firstly, I think we have a podcast on that.
Yes,
actually, I think it came out.
Yeah, it was our first episode.
It was our first episode. So
great. Oh, we'll link to that.
Not to plug, but plug. Yeah. So you want to start?
Yeah. So the quick and dirty version is that the conversation seems to be, is AI going to replace all of these different jobs, right? And so for the sake of conversation in this context, we'll talk about content marketing and copywriting. Is it going to replace your creatives, right?
Yes.
And I would say in short, no, it won't. I would say that it's certainly come a long way. I've played around with several of the tools just because I've been curious, who isn't curious at this point, right? But I would say from what I've found, if you give it a good prompt for a short form piece, it'll spit out something decent, and then you might just need to tweak it a little bit. But when you're doing a long form piece, or you're doing something more intricate, or you're doing something very specific that's going to need some research behind it, it's really only useful for brainstorming purposes, to help get the ideas out of your head and on paper. Beyond that, you really need to go in and make sure that that language is correct, that structure is correct, that it's conveying with every single word what you need it to. I had a writing teacher once who told me the point of your final draft, whether it's a book or a script or a piece of freelance writing, is that every single word means exactly what it is meant to. And if it doesn't, you are not ready to publish it. Period. And so that's the kind of dedication that we like to put into each of our pieces. And AI can't do that.
Yeah. Does AI? Yeah. I thank you for sharing that, because I'm super curious about the tools as well right now, especially because we do a lot of writing as well. And it makes me a little nervous. I'm like, are they going to just take away all of our creativity? And where does our brand voice exist? And where does our creativity exist when we are using these tools, or other people are using these tools?
Right.
But is the AI able to pick up on those subtleties and nuances of the brand voice at this? I mean, I'm hearing at this point, but
okay, so that's actually a fairly complicated question.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because so if you got a couple $100,000, yes, it does.
fair enough.
Most of us, sorry, we don't have that laying around just for fun. Maybe you do, I don't know. But you can train AI through databases. Specifically language modeling is what I'm going to talk about here. So there's different language modeling, like Chat GPT is a language model. Or it's a I want to say an obfuscation, but that's not correct. It's an abstract, it's a layer on top of a main language model, but that doesn't matter. Sorry. So you can, if you're like a computer sciencey person, upload files to a database in which that AI will read all those different types of files, but they have to be formatted correctly.
Yeah.
And then then it has more information, and therefore it can write on more things. So if you feed it specific things for a specific voice, you might be able to get it to mimic a specific brand voice. I think we might see that more in the future, but that actually makes our jobs all that more valuable. Okay. I'll give you an example. in the the early 1900s, hat makers were still a very big thing. Okay. But they were starting to die out after the Great Depression. And actually, like my grandma and stuff. So in the 50s, the girls of the 50s and stuff stopped wearing hats. And a lot of the hat makers went out of business. But the hat there, actually the trade almost went entirely extinct. However, now it's, first of all, experiencing another resurgence because our clothing has become so standardized that people need expression in some way. And so hats are a really great way to do that for women, especially. But now that craft has so much more purpose than it did at the beginning of the 1900s, or into the 1930s and 1940s. And I think we're going to see something very similar. Maybe because of the speed of technology, it's really hard to say. It could be 6 months or it could be 15 years. I think we will see language models and AI help with our systemization of our businesses. But when it comes to marketing and it comes to storytelling, a human is the only one that can tell stories with such compassion and such in-depth emotion that you can train a computer, sure, but the computer doesn't know when to pause. A computer doesn't know when to pitch the voice up or down, right? And maybe we can train that. I don't know, genuinely, but that's where writers are going to become the mediocre, the sub-average, and even the average, right? They're just going to get wiped out eventually because the AI will eventually be able to produce. But the people who focus, or the writers and the marketers who focus on human connection, you'll always win. You'll always win because humans know, when another human is talking to you. Let's just talk about dialing into, I don't know, your favorite credit card company or your bank. Hello, please press 1, right? And you're like, you can make that voice more human-like, sure, but it's not a human.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point about, and we see this in all sorts of different industries. We're also in the real estate industry, but it's just all coming back to this but re-emphasizing the human connection and almost anything that we do as technology continues to evolve. You're right. It's going to eliminate some jobs. It has throughout history, right?
Yes, absolutely.
As you mentioned. And so there's always going to be innovation because that's just what we do. And innovation or becoming more niche or becoming more expert or writing becomes more of a craft. As you're mentioning with the hats, or simply that the focus becomes more on that human connection rather than some of the stuff that can become systematized. But you can't replicate that human connection yet.
Yes.
Yet.
Yes.
Awesome. What are you guys working on next?
The big go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So right now our company is just experiencing some amazing growth. And so first of all, that takes a lot of time.
It does.
So that's a really exciting thing. We're looking to expand and start to hire more people, more very highly specialized roles, rather than kind of people that wear multiple hats. So on one end, that's what we're doing, and that's for the company. The other thing is we are looking for, we want to start a couple blogs of our own. We already have
the Variantista blog.
Yeah, we already have blogs of our own that we practice things on and see what happens. But we want to develop some more hobby blogs, I guess is the way to put it. Things that we are just generally interested in. and see if we can turn those into businesses. So I think we have 10 or 12 different blogs that we want to kind of throw out there into the world and see what happens to them. And maybe those are all multi-million-dollar businesses, or maybe we're going to lose a lot of money, but it'll be fun along the way.
More than likely, they'll perform fine.
Yeah, right. And I mean, right, blogging is low cost to entry generally.
Low cost to entry, and it's one of those things like Derrick said earlier, it takes time. It's a delayed gratification game, but when it pays off, it pays off, and it pays off consistently as long as you are willing to do things right and do things well as you're going along and not quit.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how many people became millionaires because they were blogging.
Yeah.
Like it's actually quite a few.
I know. Well, the one that comes to mind immediately is, did Tim Ferriss start out as a blogger? Is that accurate?
Oh goodness,
I don't know.
I'll have to look that up. I mean, obviously we know.
Google it.
Yeah.
We'll Google that later. That's awesome. Where can our listeners connect with you to learn more about your company and about your upcoming blogs?
So we are most active on LinkedIn right now. They can search for Variantista, but they can also search for me. That's where most of our content is at the moment. On our website, there's our blog. And we're also expanding into doing Instagram and Twitter and things like that. But right now, LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of us.
Yeah, so everything's at Variantista.
Oh, and there's a YouTube channel and a podcast.
Yeah.
Subscribe.
So I was about to say also,
yeah.
Please check out the podcast. Tell us how to improve, because we're learning, and we're really excited to be on this adventure, because we've kind of been on the other side of this, right? We've done a lot of this for other people, and they've made a lot of money and had amazing success with it. And we hit one day where it's like, wait a minute,
we need to do this more for ourselves.
Yeah.
So definitely you can check out the podcast on YouTube and Spotify.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll put everything in the show notes. And I just want to thank you both so much for sharing so many great tips, sharing about your entrepreneurial journey, and that the fact that you're constantly iterating and testing things out, and that you're sharing that with all of us at the same time, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes,
it's been a good time.
It's been great. I've had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.